If history shows us two things, it's that pandemics keep on coming, and so do stories. Hi, I'm Natalie, and I'm here to talk about people and pandemics. So, plagues have been happening for a long time, and in the 20s, kind of a lot, for thousands of years really, starting with in 420 BC, the Plague of Athens, but more recently in the last 400 years we've had in the 1620s, we had the Italian Plague, in the 1720s we had the Great Plague of Marseilles, in the 1820s we had the first cholera pandemic, obviously from 1918 to 1920 we had the Spanish influenza, and now in 2020 we have COVID-19. So pandemics have been happening. It's a pattern that's been going on for a long time, but instead of talking about the horrors of pandemics, I think that today might be a good day to talk about the fun stuff. Specifically, I mean things like the Decameron. But art has always happened during pandemics as well. Life doesn't stop. Shakespeare, for example, wrote King Lear, Macbeth, and Antony and Cleopatra, all during the plague that you probably know best, which is the plague that happened around the mid-1350s-ish, where theaters were closed, people were, half of your population was pretty much decimated. So that was the most famous plague of all time, and it's also the time in which Giovanni Boccaccio wrote the Decameron. The Decameron is one of my favorite books. It was written in 1353 during the highlight of the Black Death, aka the bubonic plague. So the framework of this book is that 7 young women and 3 young men have decided to leave Florence and go out into the countryside to escape the plague. They're there for 10 days, and every day for 10 days, each one of them will tell a story. So we have 10 people every night, 10 stories, which leads to 100 stories, which make up the Decameron. They don't mention the plague in their stories, just like I mentioned Shakespeare and 3 of his greatest tragedies also don't mention the plague. Neither does the Decameron. Instead, the stories are about adultery and love and sex and other types of tragedies. But really, they're about what it means to be human. They're the kind of stories you would tell before you die. The story exists in a double framework. The innermost framework is where a speaker introduces a story, usually reacting to their friend who just told them a story beforehand, and then you jump into the actual story, and then on the outside of that, you have the framework of the plague and all of them escaping it. Just to get into exactly why I love it, I will tell you one of my very favorite stories from the Decameron, so sit tight. A local nunnery has become infamous for its temperamental and difficult young nuns. After their gardener has quit his post due to their constant pestering, a young man in the village hears of how irritable these young ladies are and that they're in the market for a new gardener, so he decides that he can formulate a plan that will get him a post there, provide him with a job, and provide some relief for these young ladies that will be mutually beneficial to all parties. He pretends to be a deaf mute and goes over to the nunnery. He quickly secures work as their new gardener, and one afternoon, one of the young nuns and her friend find him sleeping underneath a tree in the shade. The girl tells her friend that the ladies who have visited the nunnery have told her of the wonders of lying with a man, and they decide that since the man is deaf-mute, he can't tell on them for anything. So they take the now awake and very eager and willing man into their shed and take turns with him. They soon end up bragging to their friends about what they've done, and pretty quickly word spreads of how wonderful this man is in bed, and he ends up becoming the lover of all 8 of the young nuns who are in the nunnery. The abbess, knowing nothing of this, is continuing about her day, but does remark that the ladies seem more relaxed lately. However, on her own volition, the abbess herself ends up seeking out the young man eventually, and she decides that she's going to lay with him too. After keeping this up for many weeks, the young man one day completely snaps, and while he is in bed with the abbess, he says he has had enough and he has to go home, leading to one of my favorite quotes in all of literature. I have always been given to understand, ma'am, that whereas a single cock is quite sufficient for 10 hens, 10 men are hard put to satisfy one woman. And so I challenge you to find your quarantine buddies, whether you're family or friends that you're staying with now, or call up some people and do, a group FaceTime or Zoom call and tell some stories. Don't worry about everything that's going on in the world right now. Talk about life and humanity in fun and interesting ways. And I think you're gonna feel better. You don't have to do it for 10 days straight telling 100 stories, but I think a couple will put you in a good mood.
And please, the next time someone tells you that old books are boring, or that people used to be so conservative and stuffy and religious that they didn't used to talk about things like sex, refer them to this beautiful 14th century work of nothing but adultery and sex.
Of course, I hope you're practicing social distancing and proper hygiene. Make sure you are washing your hands at least 20 seconds, staying 6 feet away from people, only going out when you need to, obviously. I want you to stay informed, stay smart, and stay safe. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back to talk more about medieval history in probably longer videos in more detail, but just wanted to get a nice little warm up in. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, make sure to subscribe, comment, like. I love to hear from you. And if you have any suggestions on topics that you would like me to talk about, leave them in the comments below. Thanks. Bye.